Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's meeting. This week, we will be talking a little bit about CPT and HCPCS, and we'll review some of the questions I've been getting throughout the last week in the class. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to share my screen with you now. Okay, you guys should see my screen or see my document. And I'm getting an error. Okay, and it just worked a few minutes ago. So let's try this again. Okay, there we go. So this week, again, we'll be talking about HCPCS coding, a little bit about the discussion question. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. Just as a few reminders, you want to make sure that you are completing your daily assignments for attendance. This is very important. We've actually started opening up the assignments early so that you guys can have access, at least for the assignment for the next day or even for the next week. So go ahead on and start working on your assignments early. Just want to remind you that if the assignment says manual grading on there, when you are finished the assignment, that is not your final grade. What's going on is that you'll have assignments where you have to type in an answer. So in the answer key, if you don't type the answer exactly how it appears in the answer key, it will actually mark that answer incorrect. So we then have to go in and manually grade it. So once it's manually graded, that will be the grade that you'll actually get. So if it's manually graded, again, we have to go in and make some adjustments. So for example, if you use a capital letter for that word for your answer, and let's say it's in the answer key as a lowercase letter, it's going to mark it wrong. So we'll go in and we actually grade those manually. So just don't worry about it. You will get credit. It's just something that we have to do manually. If you don't have Microsoft Word, remember you can use Google Docs. I have a link for it in the classroom. If you don't see it or if you need more help with that, send me an email and I'll send you a link about using Google Docs. All of your assignments, so like your labs and your quizzes and your exams, those are due on Sunday. So be sure to submit those in by Sunday at midnight. For your daily assignments, another reason why you want to get those in each day that is because you will receive a late penalty of 5% each day. So make sure that you are submitting your assignments in each day. And then your labs and your quizzes, those again will be due on Sunday. So any questions about what I've just reviewed? And I don't see any right now. So if you guys have questions, you always can email me and I'll answer any questions you have. Again, make sure you're using your resources, which would be your ebook and online medical dictionary, and then also your coding manuals. So I was going to talk a little bit about the discussion that we had last week to get you guys feedback on it. But I don't have that many students here to talk about it. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to email me and let me know what were your thoughts on the discussion question. Did you like it? Was it great? Was it good? What you didn't like about it? So we just want to kind of get your feedback on the discussion questions. So if you can just email me that, that would be great. So the next thing we're going to talk about is your level 2 codes, which are also known as HCPCS codes. So I want to give you a little bit more background about those. I know I gave you one assignment on what was the differences. So now let's talk about who actually use those codes. So most of those codes are going to be used on an outpatient basis, and they mainly are used by physicians, dentists, orthodontists, and also your temporary Medicare codes. So, for example, you're not going to use HCPCS if the patient is inpatient. Most likely, HCPCS will not be used. They also use for certain drugs, durable medical equipment, any ambulance services, or the patient calls for an ambulance, and then we send out a bill for that. Those codes are in your HCPCS manual. Any prosthetics, orthotics, or any type of facility. So these are the different providers and the different services that you'll be looking in your HCPCS for. Some payers do require HCPCS codes, but make sure, and how you can find out is, one, if your claim gets denied, then you know, okay, I need to find a different code and they don't accept it, or you can go on their website. But for the most part, most of them will accept it for services that they accept HCPCS codes for. So as you know, with CPT, just because it is in the manual does not mean that every carrier accepts that code. So it's the same thing with HCPCS. Again, those codes are mainly used in the outpatient setting, including outpatient hospital. So some of the codes that you may find in there, and just because it's in the manual, you'll find something for hearing aids. Well, Medicare doesn't pay for hearing aids, but yet we do have a code for it. So what we're basically saying is, just because it's in the book, so either CPT, HCPCS, just because it's in there does not mean it's always covered. So just keep that in mind. So it may be a code for it, but maybe that insurance company will decide, no, I don't want to cover that service. So it's all up to the payer to decide which services that they will be covering. You will have some temporary codes. They usually will begin with either a G, K, Q, S, or T. That indicates that they are a temporary code. So they have an example of one, which is the heavy duty wheelchair, which is the K0006, which is for the heavy duty wheelchair. That's just an example of one. And I think I mentioned last week that the codes are changed every January, but codes can be added, deleted, or revised throughout the year. And you'll be notified through a bulletin through your carrier. So what would normally happen is, and as we stay into your program here, you will go on to like Medicare website so that you can see where you can sign up for bulletins. Basically, you're going to get an email when something changes, if there's any updates. So it's not only with HCPCS codes, it's with anything that they want to do updates. They'll normally send out a bulletin. So in your HCPCS book, you'll have an index, very similar to your ICD-10. And as I said before, you'll start noticing some common themes with the different coding manuals. They all have an index. And as we've said before, you should never code from the index. Because again, you don't have all the information about that code in the index. So make sure, just like with ICD-10, you're not, and just like with CPT, you're not going to code from the index. You're going to reference the main portion of your text before assigning your code. So here's an example. So they're showing you, where you're going to look for these different codes inside of your manual. Most of the time, it's going to be in alphabetical order, and they're going to tell you where to actually start to look for those codes in your book. Most of the codes are going to be alphanumeric. Once you get to the code, you'll actually see the different information about that code, and you'll have any coding guidelines that they want you to use before assigning that code. So any additional information about that code, you're going to now find it in that index. And as we say, never code from the actual index. So as with CPT, HCPCS has modifiers as well. And so here are some of the modifiers that you could use. So if a patient comes in and let's say they got some type of service done to their left hand second digit, you're going to actually put the modifier on there F1. And that's going to tell the insurance company that it was done to the left hand and it's also done to the second digit. So you want to give that extra information so that the insurance company has a more clearer picture of what service was actually being performed. So that's what the modifier does. Regardless of what the modifier is, it's going to give you additional information about that code. Again, you want to make sure that that payer accepts modifiers and which ones they accept and which ones they don't. For the most part, I say go ahead and assign the modifier, and because they do take most of them. There are situations where they may not take all the modifiers, but for the most part, I say it's been my experience that just add the modifier unless they just say they tell you don't add it on there. Some of the most common modifiers you'll get is the LT and the RT, and that's for right and left. Again, you want to go in, you want to look at those notes and find out if I can use that modifier. There are some codes that they don't want you to use the modifier. The modifier may already be in the description of the code. So you want to make sure of that. So that's what the left and the right modifier is for, to indicate which side of the body that particular procedure was done on. So for example, what they have on the screen, right kidney biopsy, and then they use the code 50200. Now, that code is already indicating that it is the right side. So you may or may not need to use that modifier, but you can always use it. You can't go wrong with it, but some companies may say it's already identified in the description, so you don't need it. But I say when in doubt, just put it on there, and worst case scenario, they'll say don't use the modifier, and then you'll just resubmit the claim without the modifier. You also have some modifiers for ambulance. So if the patient goes to the goes to the hospital they could go to the doctor as well by ambulance. You're going to put on there where that patient was picked up from. So R is for residence, and then where you're taking that patient to, which is the destination. And in this case, it'll be H for hospital. So you will put the modifier RH, and this is only for ambulance claims. So if it's not an ambulance claim, you're not going to use these modifiers. So just keep that in mind. What am I actually, coding? Because that's going to make a difference on whether you're going to need that modifier or not. So the RH is for residents to the hospital. Now, there are a whole list of modifiers. They're located inside of your coding manual. So be sure, as I say with all of your coding manuals, begin to use it, become familiar with it, because you want to know your way around the manual so that you'll be able to find codes correctly. You'll be able to identify things. So be sure to start to use your manual if you haven't already, and use it in conjunction with your book. So while you're reading the chapter, it may tell you to do something or tell you where something is located in the manual. So when it's doing that, you can actually take your coding manual and be looking at it at the same time. So that's why I always recommend to students to use your coding manual and have it next to you so that you'll be able to identify and see things as they're talking about it. So like we were just talking about the modifiers, you can pull out your coding manual and then begin to look in there. Okay, well, where are the modifiers located? So, for example, I don't know which edition of the books you guys have, but I have the, this is 2021 manual. I don't have a 2022 yet. So if you look in your 2021 manual, you'll be able to see that on page 102, there is your list of your HCPCS modifiers. So I'm gonna show you. Actually, I'm gonna show you guys my book, and then so I have this book here. So it's going to show it actually the opposite way, but this is the book that I had. So if you have the same book, it'll be on page 1 of your book. So after it goes through the first section of it, you'll see your page with your modifiers on there, and then you can go through and look and see, okay, well, here's the modifiers. Some people put tabs on there so that they're able to easily locate the modifiers in the book. You guys can do that as well. I'll put the video back in that I had about setting up your book with your tabs and everything, because if you use your tabs, that'll help you to get to that section of the book as well fairly quickly. So just another tip that I can share with you to get familiar with your book, start using your book, and you'll start to become more and more comfortable with, how to find different things in the book. This book is set up just like your ICD-10. You have your coding guidelines in the beginning so that you'll then be able to look and see, well, how do I use these codes? So it's set up the same exact way. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing my screen so I can see if you guys have any questions. And so I don't see any right now. But again, this is the book that I have. You can see it a little bit better this time. So if you have this book, your coding guidelines are in there, and also you'll find your separate section for your modifiers. So since I don't see any questions at this time, I'm going to conclude our conference today. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Again, as a quick recap, you want to make sure that you are submitting your assignments. Remember your daily assignment each day, and then your regular assignments, that will be like your labs, your quizzes, any of that kind of stuff, that will be submitted on Sunday. So be sure to make sure that you're submitting your assignments on a regular basis at the times that they're due, because there could be a late penalty, and we definitely don't want you to suffer any late penalties if you really don't have to. So make sure that you are submitting your assignments as soon as possible when they're due. I try to have them open as soon as possible. So make sure that you're submitting your assignments. So as a quick recap, you want to make sure that you're using all of your additional resources that we've went over. So make sure that you're using your PowerPoints, any of your ebooks, your coding manuals. Those are resources that you have. Please use them. If you have questions, make sure you reach out to me. Also, make sure that you're using Google Docs. If you don't have Microsoft Office to submit your assignments, if you have questions about Google Docs, you can always reach out to me, and I'll give you that additional information on how to get to Google Docs. I believe I have a video in the class to show you how to use it. And then again, make sure that you're just submitting your assignments before they actually close on Sunday. So again, I don't see any questions at this time, but if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the classroom. Have a great week.